Hi everybody, this is Dr. Swanson, and this is topic 2 of COMM 362 Public Relations Writing 1. The topic 2 subject area is legal and ethical issues. I want you to pay a lot of attention in this area. It's very important. As a public relations writer, you need to write copy that is entertaining, persuasive, it tells a compelling story, it does all those things we talked about in the topic 1 area, but it's also legally appropriate. In other words, you're not violating the law in any way. And it's also ethically appropriate. And there is a challenge because ethics is very much subjective. What you might think is ethical might be different from what I think is ethical. That might be different from what the client thinks. That might be different from what the client's publics and stakeholders think. Ethics is very subjective. So many, if not most, of the discussions and arguments and disputes we get into in public relations are related to ethics. So make sure you understand that ethics cannot be absent. You hear people say, oh, he has no ethics. That's not true. He has ethics. People say that about Donald Trump. He has no ethics. Oh, he surely does. Donald Trump has ethics, and so does Hillary Clinton, and so does Bernie Sanders. They all have ethics. It's a different set of ethics, but it's ethics. So ethics cannot be absent. It's simply something that is different in different particular situations and different contexts. So make sure you're aware of that. Keep in mind that what is legal is not always ethical, and what is ethical is not always legal. Those two things, although we put them together in this subject area, they're not the same thing. So make sure you spend a lot of time with the readings in this topic area because I think it's really important. We have to proceed into our work in ways that are legally appropriate and ethically appropriate. And it all piggybacks on what we talked about last week in planning. The more you plan, the more careful you are to create a plan before you begin writing, the more likely you are to have copy that is appropriate and persuasive and tells the compelling story and does all those things we talked about because you have a good plan. And we can't get too deep into law and ethics here because we've got classes that do that completely. You know, you could and will spend a whole semester talking about legal issues, and if you take the ethics class, you'll spend a whole semester talking about ethical issues. What's important for our purposes here as public relations writers is when you sit down at the keyboard and you're ready to write, or in the middle of your writing, if that little voice in the back of your head says, "Wait a minute, something's not right here," what you need to do is lift the fingers off the keyboard and go get guidance and counsel before you continue. When people get into trouble is when that little voice tells them there's something wrong here and they just keep typing away, and that can really set you up for problems. And so listen to that little voice in the back of your head. It's there for a reason. So anyway, in this subject area, here's the things you need to hit on. These are really important, and these are covered in the written notes that I have in titanium. First, make sure you review pages 34 through 36 in the text, the law and strategic writing. This is a packed couple of pages in here. It talks about the First Amendment, political versus commercial speech. That's a very important distinction for public relations writers. Make sure you get that. The elements of libel. Remember that libel involves a falsehood. You can't write something that's true and be successfully sued for libel because if it's true, it's not libelous. There's some other things in here you need to. I'm looking down the list right now. You might wonder what I'm doing. I'm looking down the list. Privacy. Make sure you understand that privacy is not the same as defamation. Those are two completely different kinds of things. Make sure you understand puffery. We want to try to avoid puffery in public relations writing because puffery, you lose credibility when you do too much of that. People just don't believe you, and so that's something you need to stay away from. Also in that first set of readings, the Federal Trade Commission, Securities and Exchange Commission, fair use, copyright. There's a lot of important stuff packed into those pages there. So the pages are not great in number, so make sure you spend a lot of time looking at them very seriously and that you understand the differences between those areas. While you're at it, your style book got to read this. Got to look at this section. Even if you don't have the 2015, if you have an older version, that's okay. Briefing on media law, got to read this, because this too is the core of where we are as public relations writers, and having a good sense of that will keep you out of trouble. Pages 26 through 30 of the text, ethics and strategic writing. How do we write ethically? In other words, how do we make sure our values align with the values of the people that we're writing for? In that section, ethics is very strongly linked to trust. And today, in the world in which we live, brands live or die based on trust. A company will not survive if people don't trust it. A brand will not survive if people don't trust it. You, as a graduate, need to develop your own brand that explains to employers who you are and what you're all about. And if your brand is such that people don't trust you, you're not going to be employable. Quick anecdote. In this class, about a year ago, I had a student, we're doing the portfolio assignment at the end of the class, and the student put there in his portfolio links to social media. And when I went to those links and looked at his social media, I couldn't believe what he had in there. He had stuff that, well, let's just say it was not socially acceptable. And within the social media were photographs that were not appropriate, and an email address that was something nasty. It was just bad. And so in my feedback on the portfolio, I said, hey, you got to not do this, because you've got social media content out there and employers are going to find it and they're going to have that same reaction that I had, and they're not going to want to hire you. And he didn't get it. And it took a little back and forth with me and him through email to get him to understand that social media, that's you. And the images you put out there, that's you. And if that is nasty or creates an impression of you being untrustworthy, not somebody we'd want to hire, not somebody who would be fun to have around the office, or perhaps somebody who would be too much fun to have around the office, you're not going to get an interview. And you're not going to get an interview, and you're not going to get a job. And so what's true for brands and companies and organizations is also true for you. And so you've got to be very aware of that as you begin to create your professional image in the marketplace. Okay, so I've gotten off track here a little bit. So make sure you pay a lot of attention in the readings to ethics and strategic writing, because not only do you want to visually portray yourself well in social media, you want to portray that you know how to write, and you can write well, and you can help a client really advance their image. And so that's really important for you as a public relations writer. Also in this topic area, we're going to be looking at diversity. Ethical writing is honest, complete, timely, fairly distributed. That's from the text 28 through 29. So make sure you pay attention to that too. Diversity is about giving everybody a voice. It's about, in particular in public relations, giving voice to the people who don't have a voice. And that's what we do. That's why we're in this business. We're not in this business just to make money. We're in this business to do the right thing for people and organizations. And diversity is very much a component to that. So anyway, all of this is summarized in the typewritten notes that I have in titanium. So make sure you look at those. Make sure you do the chapter readings. Make sure you look at the AP Style Guide and the overview of legal issues that writers there need to be concerned about, because this is very much part of the bedrock of public relations writing. You got to get it in terms of ethics, and you got to get it in terms of legal issues, because if you don't, nobody is going to accept your writing as the compelling story, the compelling, persuasive, thoughtful story that it needs to be for clients. So go through those materials. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.